Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and yeah, I am finally a meta slave. I'm on my free-to-play account today, as you can see, with the lack of premium consumables and also with the name of the account. And long story short, this is an account I started in 2018 to be able to kind of get an idea of what the new player experience is, because quite honestly, when you're a community contributor, you get everything for free, you really lose an idea of what it's like to play World of Tanks for the first time, or to be able to play without all of the paid and free advantages that I get myself on my main account. Now, today's video is going to be about the meta in World of Tanks, and specifically vehicles like this, the AMX M4 51. This is a tier 9 French heavy tank that Wargaming has buffed to a point of where it's just absolutely outrageous. Not specifically this vehicle, it's more the tier 10 vehicle that they've done. They improved the gold penetration, they've improved the accuracy, the rate of fire, everything. And the AMX M4 51 was always really good at tier 9, and now everyone's wanting to play it, not just because it's good, because they want to keep the tank, but they're wanting to play it because they want to get to the tier 10, which is absolutely outrageous. Onslaught was a game mode recently, which was probably the most competitive form of World of Tanks outside of Ranked. Or people could argue that Onslaught was even more of an idea of player skill than playing Ranked, as it was a smaller form factor, and therefore, you know, those micro engagements were even more influential. In Onslaught, I saw more AMX M4 54s than I cared to ever see probably in World of Tanks history. And you can't really blame the player base that when Wargaming make one vehicle just outrageously better than most of the other vehicles, that people are going to pick it. Because at the end of the day, these are weapons to be able to destroy your opponents, and why would you want to not have the best weapon for the job when, if you put yourself in something else and you end up playing against somebody who has that tool, that you're just putting yourself at a disadvantage. So I have decided that, you know what, if you can't beat them, join them. And actually, I'd like to clarify, while I didn't get Legend or rank in Onslaught on my free-to-play account, I managed to get Champion, and I did that without using premium consumables. I did it without playing an M454, and did it also without a Super Conqueror. Nevertheless, I thought to myself, well, you know what, if Onslaught's going to be a big thing, and as Wargaming keep making it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, with the amount of players that are on the battlefield, that means the variety goes down. And with the tank switching as well in Onslaught, you might as well try and get yourself the best possible tanks, because you know that your enemies are not going to give you any kind of quarter like that. And so a vehicle like this, the AMX M4 51, is just absolutely ridiculous. It has all of the frontal armor to be able to ricochet most of the shells that hit the tank. Sure, it has the bad side armor and rear armor, but if you're getting hit in the side and the rear, you're probably on some kind of an open map and not actually taking into account as to where your opponents, where they are, and you want to keep them in front. I'm about to get hit in my butt though here. Unfortunately, the Scorpion just YOLO'd around that corner and puts a big old round into the back of my tank. Luckily, as I'm on my free-to-play account, I don't need to rush to be able to repair my fuel tanks, because I have a fire extinguisher. I know, a luxury, right? That I'm not having to spend 10,000 credits a game to be 5% better than everyone who doesn't. But having that fire extinguisher can also give you a little bit of an advantage with regards to keeping your repair kit, which means that sometimes you won't even really need to have a durability device, because you've always got the repair kit for the tracks, whereas on my main account, you know, it's definitely an advantage to be able to get your tracks back on quicker when you quite often have to use it on things like fuel tanks. And this is just what this vehicle does. By the way, this is the first game I played in this vehicle on the free-to-play account. So if you're wondering why it's looking a little slow, that's because I don't have the top engine yet. But as we can see, when you spawn in on Paris, in a very overpowered French tier 9 heavy tank, it doesn't really matter if you don't have the top engine, because this thing still just claps its way through its opponents. We're up to 6 kills here, 5,100 damage, and 1,000 assistance to boot. And there's still quite a lot of hit points left on the enemy team, and a few vehicles that hopefully we're going to be able to deal with. However, that interesting maneuver there by the Pantera bumping themselves over that brickwork that we can see of the, I guess, the constructed wall, some kind of barricade. Nearly managed to avoid me from getting a shell there into the Kunzerpanzer as they were making around the corner. Unfortunately, I don't think my blind shot will have hit, but we can check to see whether the Kunzerpanzer, when they reappear, is going to be on less hit points. And I was thinking to myself, well, maybe there would possibly be a Radley opportunity in this. Everybody can't help but feel that, right? Whenever they are on 6 kills and there's still 2 vehicles left on the enemy team, there's always the chance there could be more. Doesn't look like we hit the Kunzerpanzer blind there, however, and with the T-30, having dealt with the Caliban, I know that I've got the reload to be able to put one, if not multiple rounds into this T-30. And at this stage of the game, I might as well just let the chips fall where they may, so I'm gonna go and actually roll really high there, 471 out of 400, because I think that the stock gun, the 120mm, is actually the best gun on this tank. And wham bam, thank you ma'am. In 6 minutes we picked up 7 kills, 6,000 damage, and 1,000 spotting. This thing is just so meta. It's so darn simple. Just keep the front part of your tank towards your opponents and use that rate of fire. And people are even surprised about how good the lower plate and that front plate can be on this tank. So how do you deal with something like this? Well, if it angles like this plate here is actually the weakest because it's very flat and it's not as thick as the front. And apart from that, yeah, the 2 weak points on top is how you should deal with it. But when the aim time is so good, when the accuracy is so good on these vehicles, you often just don't have time to really aim at those weak points. And if you do, then they're punishing you, usually not once, but multiple times. So now we're rolling out on fjords, and when I spawn east on this map, I have a big old smile on my face because I really don't feel that this map is optimally balanced. It's usually safe for the eastern team to be able to slinky their way down towards the F4 ditch that I'm marking out on the mini-map around here. If you can manage to get here, and you have a few vehicles go up towards the north, that means that you can eventually start to create a crossfire with them. And then once you've created that crossfire, you can then push up towards towards the enemy base around this corner, around the first mound that we see along this C34 area. And this map is usually as easy as that. So we've got a Char 75 right in front of us who wants to just stop there and take it. And with excellent aim time on this vehicle, no hard feelings, but we're going to be able to remove pretty much a quarter or a third of your hit points before this battle has even really got started. Now we're going to be following up this 283, a very controversial vehicle that I will be having a video coming out on the channel fairly soon. I'm just giving I'm still doing some research into what chance you actually have to even be able to get that beast with the token drops, and it's looking like it's a very ugly situation. But yeah, stay tuned for that one on this channel. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about the Object 283. It will be coming soon, including a full tank review of the vehicle. As soon as I manage to actually get some more rentals of it, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So unfortunately for me, I was actually shooting at the Object 283 for pretty much the very first time. And you'll see that I'm aiming at his lower plate when I actually realized that now the weak point is kind of the middle of the tank there. You don't actually want to shoot the lower plate because it's kind of curved round and it improves the armor of the vehicle. Just nailing the middle part with a decent amount of penetration is usually more than enough to handle it. Don't know what this Object 430 is really thinking, just coming around the corner constantly. I have a very good rate of fire on this vehicle, and unfortunately, while you have half-decent pen, you don't have enough pen to be able to challenge the AMX M4 51 reliably, and just like that 430 is not very well, and his 283 towards his right is also now shut down. This is a very weird game because we didn't actually have anyone go up towards the northeast, and in fact the enemy's light tanks and medium tanks have pushed out along the 0 line there. That's actually a really nice play for the enemy team. If they can do that quickly in an uncontested area, that can in turn allow the enemy to flank around and even to be able to get shots and deny this part of the map to the team that spawns to the east and is using the position that I am in now. So be warned that while this dip is very powerful for the eastern team, if you don't also manage to hold that northeastern corner, it can get a little bit ugly. And so I realized that, and I don't really want to drive up in front of a bunch of tank destroyers with the possibility of the Char turning around there, the Char 75 on the enemy team, maybe hitting me in the side or the rear. That is not going to work out for me. And so instead, I'm going to turn around and once again turn it into a frontal fight. This is where you won these French heavy tanks. 8 degrees of gun depression, it's certainly not the best, but it's enough, and oh dear. Lucky that artillery didn't hit me direct, otherwise I might have lost even more than 250 hit points. Luckily, however, they're using a damaging shell and it wasn't a direct hit, so it's not the end of the world with regards to the amount of damage that I take. Unlike that Borsig, it is definitely the end of the world for them as they get hit for 700, likely by a Borsig towards my east, and we manage to finish them off with a clutch shot. As this vehicle has practically no aim time at all. And this is why you can just snapshot. Keep in mind that I'm also not even using vertical stabilizers on this tank right now. I believe I'm using vents with a gun rammer and a turbo. So if you're somebody who absolutely, utterly has to continue to improve the gun handling of this vehicle, then why not? But I think that's probably one of the strengths of this vehicle, and also the strength of its bigger brother, the AMX M4 54, is that because the gun handling is so good, that you actually don't have to use you don't have to use vertical stabilizers, and so it frees up the slot for something like a turbo. So we're up to 6,500 combined in the first 4 minutes of this battle, but there's still a lot left to do. There's an E75 having dealt with the east, and I was actually watching him at the time, and I saw him that he was starting to make his way back over towards here. So I don't want to get shot in the booty. Instead, what I need to do is be able to push my way up towards the east and see if we can deal with some of the tank destroyers that are chilling in these bushes. We've got the Su-130 PM and a WTF Panzer IV, and an unspotted artillery to have to deal with. I'm staying towards the right of the building there. Well, the non-destructible one, I say. Because I was worried that maybe a tank destroyer can be hiding in this kind of a position behind these rocks, or even the artillery could get a shot. And don't worry, lifeguard QuickyBaby is in the house, making sure this artillery can't manage to drown themselves, but that's actually a misplay by me, because I should have just let the artillery drown themselves, I guess, and then focus the Su-130 PM. But if we think about it from a securing kills perspective, well, I probably could have lost 500 hit points, which in a fairly close game like this was definitely a misplay. It also gives me an opportunity to possibly get a Top Gun or even more later on in this battle. Alright, so I'm loading an HE round here, thinking, shall I shoot the Su-130 or shall I go for the Char MLE? And I got an HE round, remember, so if I hit them clean, I should be able to handle it. Right in the turret, but it looks like I actually hit the gun instead, so I don't manage to finish off the Char. Now I'm going to be loading AP, thinking, can I ram them? Can I just finish them off without that? And now we're going to switch to an HE shell because I'm expecting the Su-130 PM to be coming after me. Luckily, they miss. And while my reverse speed is not bad, it looks like the SU's reverse speed is a little bit better, but not quite good enough as we put a 462 damage HE shell into their back, and the Ainani finishes them off. So, man, just like that, we are up to now nearly 8,000 combined. And if we can finish off this WTF Panzer IV, it would be even better, but that was actually not the case. As the WZ-132A finally pushes up through the eastern flank, removes the Tier 9 German tank destroyer from the game, and slowly but surely this game is starting to look pretty good. Now, full disclosure, I was starting to get a little excited, not at the prospect of having a Radley Walters medal, especially in a vehicle like this. It's about as meta as it gets, and it's really not that much of an achievement in a matchup like this. However, to do HT-15, I would now need to lose 1,300 hit points and only block 2,700 more, or be able to deal more damage. And woo, with the bounce from the E75 and also from the UDES, oh, this is starting to look a lot more chancy. So the UDES is going to continue to bounce off me with the 90mm, and unfortunately the E75 actually high rolls there, and I'm thinking, okay, come on. Oh no, Object 283 shuts them down, and I only needed about 1,000 more to be able to get this. Q. We don't do HT-15 with honors, so I don't unlock my Object 260. But how can I really be that sad about doing 9,000 combined in, once again, a very short game for a very powerful tank? My statistics in this vehicle have been, as you would expect, incredibly good for such an all-round flexible heavy tank that when you get a turbo on it, it's not even really that slow. This is an all-purpose random queue destruction machine. And as everyone who has played Onslaught will know, that it kind of became a case of, well, you didn't have to get this tank, but it definitely made it a lot more easy. I've seen so many players who I wouldn't have expected to get the champion or the legend rank who actually ended up getting it because of meta vehicles like this, or more specifically its bigger brother, the AMX M4 54. And so it's starting to become harder and harder for me to recommend that players, go with their heart and just go for something that they think looks like fun. Because at the end of the day, this is a game, it's not a super competitive game. It's more of an arcade fun game. And I think that people chasing meta vehicles like this can actually turn into a bit more of a grind. And especially the players who are then unhappy because they finally get these tanks and then they get nerfed a little bit. However, Wargaming has nerfed the AMX M4 54, but even with the nerfs, in the last 7 days on the European server, the vehicle's averaging a 53% win rate at tier 10. That is massively higher than any of the other heavy tanks, by 2.5% more than the Super Conqueror, for goodness sake. And so it's quite likely that Wargaming are going to have to do a little bit more to that tank. But what Wargaming should do, and what they actually do, is quite often two different things. And so if you absolutely, utterly only want to play the best in World of Tanks, and you want to play some tech tree tanks, then you really can't go wrong with the AMX M4 54 and also the AMX M4 51, which is also averaging 2.5% better win ratio than the Conqueror. Kind of weird how the win ratios almost match. Really shows you the Wargaming truly dialed in the statistics with these two tier 9 tanks. So our first game on Paris was a 1,636 base experience game, 6,000 damage dealt with 1,000 assistance and 7 frags. We make a 30,000 credit profit. And our follow-up was 1,763 base experience for 6,500 damage in this 7-minute ruffle stomp. And I guess the age-old saying of, well, if you can't beat them, join them, is sadly coming into play here with a lack of balancing from Wargaming. And unfortunately, it looks like my free-to-play account has finally become a slave to the meta. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments whether you're the kind of gamer that always tries to find the best tool for the job, or do you like to make your own way through the game? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.